Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the salt-crusted boots of a press-gang sailor aboard the St. Anne, a medieval plague ship sailing straight through the eye of the Black Death hurricane. Moonlight glints on Bristol's rain-slicked cobbles as you're shoved toward the docks, the air thick with the vinegar-scented smoke of fumigation fires, and the distant bone-deep tolling of the parish death bell. A scarred man with knuckles like ship rivets grips your arm. No questions asked, just a grunt and a shove toward the looming silhouette of the St. Anne. Her rigging creaks like a gallows tree in the fog, and that smell. Oh, that smell. It hits you like a fist. Sour beer, rotting fish, and beneath it all, the sweet rot tang of something far worse. You probably wouldn't survive the first watch shift, let alone the voyage. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Where are you drifting off from tonight? Drop your port of call and local time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see where these stories find anchor. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The press gang shove sends you stumbling onto the wharf, your worn shoes slipping on seaweed-tough ropes coiled like sleeping serpents. Bristol's usually raucous docks are eerily subdued tonight. Mainstream historical fact. In 1347, as the Black Death surged, ports like Bristol became desperate ghost towns. Merchants fled, sailors mutinied, and authorities resorted to press gangs, legal kidnapping, to man ships deemed essential, often plague vessels nobody else would touch. Lanterns cast long, leaping shadows where dock workers should be shouting, but only a few furtive shapes move. Faces wrapped in vinegar-soaked cloths that do nothing to hide their terror. That vinegar sting in the air? It's the desperate ghost of pickled hope. Everyone thinks it wards off the bad air. Quirky tidbit? Some sailors swore wearing socks filled with dried frogs would draw out plague poisons. You glance at your own damp, holy socks. Maybe frogs wouldn't be worse. A voice rasps from the St. Anne. Is deck sharp as a rusty hook? Move your bones, land crab. Or do you fancy swimming with the eels afore we've even cast off? It's the bosun, Silas. His face is a roadmap of old knife fights and sea salt, eyes like chips of flint reflecting the lantern light. No frog socks on him, just a leather jerkin smelling of fish oil and menace. He gestures with a knotted club, not quite touching you, but the threat hangs heavier than the harbor fog. Below decks, now, your bunk's waiting, snug as a coffin. 3 light jokes? All right. 1. Calling the press gang Bristol's welcoming committee. 2. Thinking those vinegar masks make everyone look like pickled bandits. 3. Silas's club as the motivational speaking stick. You shuffle toward the gangplank, just a slippery, narrow plank, really feeling the St. Anne. His deck shift uneasily underfoot, like a restless animal. The wood groans. Up close, the smell intensifies. Layered rot, stale sweat, and something metallic, like old blood. Lantern light flickers on barrels lashed to the deck, marked with crude white crosses. Water casks? Grain? Or something far less pleasant? Historians still argue whether plague ships deliberately carried infected goods, or were just tragically efficient disease vectors. Looking at those barrels, you hope it's the latter. Silas prods you toward a dark opening amidships, the hatch to the orlop deck. A gust of truly foul air wafts up. Unwashed bodies, vomit, mildew, and that underlying sweetness, like overripe fruit left in the sun. Your stomach lurches. Welcome home, maggot. Silas grins, revealing a gap where a tooth should be. Mind your head, and try not to trip over the cargo. He means the other men already crammed below. Living cargo, just like you. You take a breath that tastes of brine and despair, duck your head, and descend into the belly of the beast. The hatch slams shut behind you with a final, echoing thud, sealing you in with the darkness, the stench, and the soft, collective sigh of doomed men. The only light now comes from a single, guttering fish oil lamp, swinging wildly with the ship's first nauseating roll. Somewhere in the gloom, a man coughs. A wet, ragged sound that seems to echo forever in the suffocating hold. Your voyage on the floating charnel house has begun. The darkness swallows you whole. That single swinging lamp might as well be a distant star for all the light it throws. Your eyes strain, useless. It's the stench that maps the world down here. A thick, wet blanket of unwashed bodies, stale vomit, mildewed timber, and that cloying, rotten sweet undercurrent that makes your throat tighten. You stumble forward, hands instinctively reaching out, brushing rough-spun wool, clammy skin, the slimy curve of a barrel. Someone curses sleepily, shoving your hand away. Mainstream historical fact. Ships like the St. Anne often crammed crews 50% larger than safe capacity into holds designed for cargo, not humans. A calculated risk where profit outweighed survival odds during labor shortages. Breathing feels like sucking soup through a dirty rag. New meat finds its stall. Silas barks from the hatchway, his silhouette blocking the meager light. Find a patch of deck, claim it, lose it, fight for it back. He slams the hatch shut. Finality echoes in the sudden, suffocating dark. The only sounds now are the ship's groans, timber protesting like old bones, the slosh of bilge water somewhere below, and the symphony of human misery, rasping breaths, wet coughs, low moans, the rhythmic, the scritch-scratch of rats, lots of rats. You shuffle deeper, boots sticking slightly with each step on the grimy planking. Quirky tidbit? Sailors believed rats leaving a ship meant doom, but nobody mentioned the horror of them, staying, thriving in the plague-ridden squalor. You feel a furry body dart over your foot, a shudder you can't control. You bump against something solid, a bulkhead maybe. You slump down, back against the rough wood. The space beside you is already occupied. You feel the heat radiating off another body. Hear the shallow, rapid breathing. No greeting, just shared despair. Your eyes adjust fractionally. Shapes resolve. Huddled forms like sacks of grain, slumped against barrels or curled directly on the deck. Some sleep, or pretend to. Others stare blankly into the gloom. A man, a few feet away, retches dryly. Nothing left to give. The air hangs thick, unmoving, tasting of salt and decay. 3 light jokes, trying hard. 1, calling the hold the luxury lower suite. 2, dubbing the rats the furry crewmates. 3, Silas's hospitality as 5-star suffering. Your fingers explore your new domain. The deck is gritty, damp in patches. A cold rivulet of condensation or something worse trickles down the bulkhead behind you. You pull your knees up, trying to minimize contact. Time loses meaning. Minutes? Hours? The ship rolls, a slow, nauseating sway. The man beside you groans, shifting. His elbow jabs your ribs. You don't complain. Complaining draws attention. Attention draws Silas. Attention draws the bosun's knotted rope starter, aptly nicknamed the Persuader by men who'd felt its kiss. Historians still argue whether the psychological toll of confinement in these floating tombs was worse than the physical deprivation, sitting in this reeking, lightless pit. Feeling the panic bubble just beneath your ribs, you suspect they were two sides of the same cursed coin. A sliver of grayish light appears high up, a crack around the hatch cover. Dawn, the light strengthens, weak and watery, but enough to reveal the nightmare in detail. The hold is a low-ceilinged cave, ribbed with heavy timber beams, slick with moisture. Men are packed tighter than salted herrings in a barrel. Faces are gaunt, eyes shadowed hollows, skin pale or unnaturally flushed. Tunics are stained, patched, stiff with salt, and worse. You see the telltale lumps then. Under a man's jaw, another's armpit, swollen and angry red beneath the grime. Buboes, the plague's signature. Fear, sharp and cold, pricks your skin. The man beside you coughs. A deep, rattling sound that shakes his whole frame. He spits into the darkness. You don't look. You don't want to know. The hatch scrapes open fully. Silas's ugly mug appears. Rations. Look lively, maggots. A wooden pail is lowered on a rope, clattering onto the deck. It holds fist-sized, rock-hard biscuits the color of mud, and a smaller bucket sloshing with liquid. The scramble is immediate, silent, and desperate. Elbows fly. A gaunt youth snatches 2 biscuits, stuffing one into his mouth whole, choking as he tries to swallow. You push forward, grabbing one biscuit just as a gnarled hand tries to snatch it. You pull back, clutching your prize. It feels like petrified wood. The liquid bucket holds thin, sour-smelling beer. You dip a battered tin mug someone shoves at you, getting a scant half measure. Back to your spot. You raise the biscuit. Teeth meet unyielding resistance. It takes serious effort to break off a fragment. It tastes like dust, sawdust, and movement. You peer closer. Tiny brown weevils burrow deep. Extra protein, the old joke surfaces bitterly. You pick out the worst offenders and gnaw. The beer is vinegary, warm, barely W, wetting your parched throat. Breakfast on the St. Anne, mainstream fact. Ship's biscuit, hardtack, was baked rock, hard to last years, often infested with weevils and maggots. Sailors joked it was best eaten in the dark. No jokes now. You force it down. The weevils a gritty aftertaste. Survival, bite by wretched bite. The hatch slams shut again, plunging you back into the dim shared misery. The man beside you coughs again, a wetter sound now. The journey has barely begun. The sour beer sits like lead in your stomach as the biscuit grit grinds between your teeth. The hold's gloom thickens again. The sliver of hatchlight gone. Time stretches, measured only by the ship's groans and the worsening cough beside you. The man, Jim, you heard someone rasp his name, shivers violently now, his breath hitching in wet, ragged gasps. You inch away, pressing harder against the damp bulkhead, trying to shrink into the wood. That's when you see it in the murk. A swollen lump beneath Jem's left ear, bulging against his grimy neckcloth like an overripe plum. A bubo, plague's grim signature. Panic crackles through the hold like a spark hitting gunpowder. Whispers hiss through the darkness. Bubo, on Jem. Men scramble back, creating a desperate shifting void around Jem's huddled form. Boots scrape, Bodies press against barrels. Curses mingle with prayers. The collective breath holds. Mainstream historical fact. Bubonic plague, Yersinia pestis, caused painful lymph node swellings, buboes, high fever, and often death within days. The terrifying visual proof that death wasn't just aboard, he was settling in. Jem whimpers, clawing weakly at the lump, his eyes wide with dawning horror in the dimness. Quirky tidbit, sailors believed the first man to spot a bubo on a ship was cursed to be the next victim. The terrified youth who'd called it out now hugs himself, rocking, eyes darting wildly. A heavy boot thuds on the deck above. The hatch scrapes open. Silas's silhouette blots out the weak light. What's this Catawalan plague got your tongues? Or just your brains? His flinty eyes scan the hold, instantly finding the terrified cluster, the isolated figure. He sees Jem's swollen neck. A muscle ticks in his jaw. No surprise. Just cold assessment. Right. You. He jabs a thick finger at two burly sailors near the ladder. Him. Up. Now. Sick berth. The sick berth. A polite term for the forecastle locker. A cramped, airless space near the bow, unofficially dubbed the dying hole. Jem tries to protest. A weak gurgle. But the sailors haul him up roughly, his feet dragging on the slick deck. 3 light jokes feel like ash. 1, calling the panic the bubo shuffle. 2, dubbing Silas the health inspector. 3, the sick berth as the private cabin upgrade. The hatch slams, plunging you back into near darkness. The silence now is worse than the panic. Thick, suffocating, heavy with unspoken dread. Every cough, every sniffle, every rustle of cloth feels amplified. Is that a heat radiating from the man opposite? Does he have a lump under his arm? You pull your threadbare tunic tighter, feeling phantom itches crawl over your skin. Historians still argue whether the rapid spread of plague on ships was due to infected rat fleas, the horrific overcrowding, or sheer psychological contagion, amplifying real symptoms. Right now, all 3 feel true. The man beside you, the one who elbowed you earlier, shifts. First one, he mutters, voice raw. Won't be the last. Seen it afore. He spits onto the deck. Pray your fever burns quick, lad. Cleaner than the lumps. Hours crawl by. The hold reeks of fierce sweat now, layered over the old stench. The rhythmic scritch-scratch of rats seems louder, more deliberate, mocking. You try to focus on the ship's sounds, the groan of timbers, the creak of rigging transmitted through the hull, the distant rush of water along the sides. Anything but the wet coughs and stifled moans. Mainstream fact. Medieval ships lacked any real medical isolation. The sick berth was merely a way to remove visibly ill men from the main crew, doing little to stop transmission via fleas, lice, or contaminated air. Jem's whimpers drift down faintly from the bow, a chilling counterpoint to the ship's noises. A stark reminder. The dying hole is just a few paces away, separated only by thin planking and willful ignorance. Silas returns, not for rations, but with a shorter, wiry man, clutching a stained leather bag. The barber surgeon. His face is pinched, anxious, eyes darting nervously. He reeks of cheap wine and dried herbs. He scans the hold like a man walking through a minefield. Who feels the heat? The ache, he calls out, voice trembling slightly. No one volunteers. Men look down, shrink back. Admitting weakness invites the surgeon's care. or Silas's club. The surgeon sighs, defeated before he starts. He gestures toward the forecastle. That one first, then. He scrambles up the ladder after Silas, clutching his bag like a shield. Quirky detail? Barber surgeons often diagnosed illness by tasting the patient's urine, a practice called uroscopy. You wonder if Jem's fate hinges on the surgeon's palate tonight. Jem's cries start soon after. Thin, animal sounds of pain and terror that cut through the hold's oppressive silence. They're working on him. The sounds twist your gut. It's not the agonized screams you might expect, but a desperate, keening wail, punctuated by low, urgent murmurs from the surgeon and Silas's impatient growls. Then, a sharp, metallic clink. Instruments. The cries escalate, raw and ragged, before subsiding into choked sobs. Silence returns, heavier than before. Minutes later, the surgeon scrambles back down, his face ashen, wiping bloody hands on a rag he shoves deep into his bag. He avoids all eyes and flees back up the ladder. Silas leans down. Jem's resting, he announces, voice flat. Anyone else feeling poorly? Speak now. The silence is absolute. Jem's whimpers have stopped. Resting. Or silenced. You stare at the grimy deck between your boots. The bubble watch is over. For now, the ship groans, carrying its living cargo deeper into the pestilent dark. The only certainty is the itch you can't scratch behind your ear. Imagination? Or the first whisper of the fever? The vinegar reek hits you first. Thick, eye-watering fumes coil down the hatch before Silas's boots even appear. He's swinging a battered bronze censer filled with smoldering herbs, rosemary, maybe wormwood, the acrid smoke doing little to mask the hold's deeper rot. Up, maggots, air purgin, he barks, voice rough from the fumes. Mainstream historical fact. The dominant miasma theory blamed plague on corrupt, foul-smelling air. Miasma, leading to rituals like burning pungent herbs or vinegar-soaked cloths to cleanse the atmosphere. Utterly ineffective against fleas, but psychologically vital. You scramble up with the others, lungs burning, desperate for even the damp, plague-tainted air of the deck. Emerging topside feels like surfacing from a grave. The gray daylight is blinding after the hold's gloom. You gulp air, tasting salt, smoke, and that ever-present undercurrent of decay. The St. Anne pitches gently on a leaden sea, sails limp. Mist hangs low, swallowing the horizon. Silas shoves a smaller censer into your hands. Swing it. Walk the deck. Drive the foulness out. It's heavy, hot through the thin metal, trailing bitter smoke. Quirky tidbit? Some captains insisted crews wear sprigs of rue or garlic around their necks during fumigation, believing these antidotal herbs created personal shields against bad air. You see a few men fumbling with wilted greenery. You just clutch the searing censer handle. You join the shuffling procession along the narrow gangways. Men move like sleepwalkers, swinging their censers listlessly. Faces wrapped in vinegar-soaked rags. The smoke stings your eyes, making the mist-shrouded deck swim. Ahead, near the forecastle, the barber surgeon, Elias, you heard his name, is setting up his grim theater. He's laid stained leather rolls on a barrel top, revealing an array of terrifying instruments. A wicked, curved fleam, bleeding blade. Scarificators like brass spiders with snapping claws, and rows of squat glass cups for cupping. Jem sits slumped on a coil of rope nearby, head lolling, A crude bandage stained rusty brown around his neck, where the bubo swells obscenely. Elias mutters prayers while wiping a fleam blade on his sleeve. 3 light jokes die in your throat. 1. Calling the censor procession, the stink parade. 2. Dubbing Elias's tools, the misery starter kit. 3. Jem's slumped form as the reluctant audience. Hold him. Elias orders Silas, nodding at Jem. The bosun grips Jem's shoulders, pinning him against the mast. Jem moans, too weak for real struggle. Elias dabs vinegar near the swollen bubo. He positions the fleam, a short, cruel blade designed for slicing veins. You look away just as he makes the quick, practiced cut. Jem's gasp is sharp, ragged, blood, dark and thick. Wells instantly, trickling down his neck into his tunic. Elias catches some in a small pewter bowl. Historians still argue whether bloodletting was pure quackery or occasionally relieved pressure, swelling in specific ailments. But against plague, it was like bailing the ocean with a spoon. Elias mutters about balancing the humors as the blood flows. He ignores the bubo itself. That's God's work, or the devil's. You, new fish. Silas snaps at you. Stop gawping. Keep swinging. You jerk your sensor back into motion, the smoke trail swirling. The metallic tang of Jem's blood mixes nauseatingly with the burning herbs. Elias moves to cupping now. He heats a small glass cup in the sensor's flame, then slaps it onto Jem's back, away from the bubo. The flesh sucks up into the cup with a wet thlup sound, turning purple. He places another and another. Jem whimpers with each one, trembling violently in Silas's grip. The cups cling like grotesque, blood-filled leeches. Mainstream fact. Cupping aimed to draw corrupted humors to the skin's surface via suction, often causing significant bruising and pain for zero therapeutic benefit against plague. Elias peers at Jem's blood in the bowl, swirling it like cheap wine. Uroscopy was common, but hematoscopy? Likely just for show. He frowns, pours it overboard. The ritual ends as abruptly as it began. Elias pulls the cups off, leaving angry purple welts. He wipes the fleam, repacks his tools with trembling hands. Silas releases Jem, who slumps forward, barely conscious, neck still oozing sluggishly. Back below both of ye, Silas orders Elias and the semi-conscious Jem. Rest'll fix him. The irony hangs thick as the smoke. Elias scurries away, relief palpable. 2 sailors half carry, half drag Jem back towards the forecastle's sick berth, the dying hole. His bare feet leave faint smears of blood on the damp deck planking. You keep swinging your sensor, the motion hypnotic, numbing. The deck seems emptier now, quieter. Men avoid the spot where Jem bled. The mist presses closer, muffling the creak of the rigging. The incense smoke feels less like purification and more like a shroud. Silas paces, restless, eyeing the crew. His gaze lands on a young sailor vigorously rubbing a smooth gray river stone over his chest. "What's this foolery, Tom?" he growls. The sailor flinches. "Wart. Charm, bosun. Found it ashore." Rubs the plague away. Silas snorts. "Rub your head with it, might knock sense in." A few nervous titters ripple through the men. 3 actual jokes? Still tough. 1. Silas's suggestion about the wart. Charm. 2. Calling the cupping marks Elias's purple polka dots. 3. Dubbing the sensor smoke. The bosun's perfume. You stare at the bloodstains on the deck. They're already fading in the damp, diluted by sea spray. But the image is seared into your mind. The flames flash, the dark blood, gems, resigned terror. The vinegar fumes sting your eyes. Or maybe it's something else. The Saint Anne groans, a deep, weary sound. The swinging censer in your hand feels heavier than lead. It doesn't drive out foulness, it only masks it, like praying over a corpse. The real plague isn't just in the air, or the rats. It's in the helplessness, the useless rituals, the slow bleed of hope on a ship sailing nowhere but deeper into the gray, miasmic dark. You keep swinging. What else is there to do? The incense smoke clings to your clothes like a shroud, long after Silas barks the order to douse the censers. The deck reeks of wet herbs, vinegar, and the fading copper tang of Jem's blood. Men shuffle back below, shoulders slumped, the brief illusion of cleansing shattered. You linger by the rail, gulping the marginally cleaner air, watching Jem's bloodstains blur into the damp planking. Gray mist presses down, muffling the world. The Saint Anne feels utterly alone on a leaden sea. A low chant begins near the mainmast. It starts with one voice, cracked and hesitant. Old Finn, the sailmender whose fingers are permanently bent from decades of rope work. Sancte Roche, ora pro nobis. Saint Roche, pray for us. Others join, voices weaving into a fragile tapestry of sound. Sailors from Gascony muttering in Occitan, a Genoese deckhand crossing himself. Even Silas stands rigid, head bowed, knuckles white on his club. Mainstream historical fact. Saint Roch, depicted with a plague bubo on his thigh and a faithful dog, became the primary patron saint of plague victims in the 14th century. His veneration spreading like wildfire alongside the Black Death itself. A crude wooden figure, roughly carved and stained with tar, is passed hand to hand, the ship's makeshift roch. Someone presses a stub of tallow candle into your palm. Quirky tidbit? Sailors believe the direction the candle smoke drifted indicated if the saint was listening. Upward for yes, sideways for indifference, downward for grim refusal. Your candle sputters, smoke twisting sideways into the damp air. Not promising. You kneel on the slippery deck, the wood cold and hard through your thin trousers. The chant swells, a desperate drone against the ship's groans and the ever-present sigh of the sea. Men clutch charms, a dried toad in a pouch, a sliver of rowan wood, a nail purported to be from the true cross. You press your own meager candle stub against the deck, trying to shield its frail flame from the damp breeze. Tea, please. Not me, not yet. The words form silently, more instinct than coherent prayer. Images flash, the reeking hold, Jem's swollen neck, the surgeon's blood, slick phlegm. Historians still fiercely argue whether these collective prayers offered genuine solace or merely amplified shared terror by acknowledging the inevitable. Kneeling here, the cold seeping into your bones, it feels like both. A thin rope thrown over a bottomless chasm. 3 light jokes feel sacrilegious, but the rhythm demands them. 1. Calling the sideways smoke. Saint Roche checking his messages. 2. Dubbing Old Finn's chant, the holy hum. 3. Silas's pious grip on his club as the devotional dumbbell. The priest emerges from below. Father Anselm, a gaunt, hollow-eyed man who boarded with the last desperate supplies in Bristol. He clutches a simple wooden cross, his vestments worn and salt-stained. He raises his hands, his voice cutting through the chant, thin but carrying the weight of terrified authority. Brethren, we sail through the valley of the shadow, but fear not. The Lord is our shepherd, and Saint Roche our intercessor. He launches into a Latin litany, the familiar rhythms offering a brittle comfort. He sprinkles what looks like seawater, probably vinegar, over the huddled crew. This pestilence is a trial, a scourge for our sins. Repent, cleanse your souls as we cleanse this ship. His eyes scan the faces, lingering on the pale, the sweaty, the ones trying to hide a cough. Mainstream fact. Medieval clergy often interpreted the plague as divine punishment, leading to mass penitential processions and fervent, often hysterical, appeals for forgiveness, sometimes tipping into violent scapegoating, though thankfully not yet aboard the St. Anne. Father Anselm's gaze holds more fear than fire. The prayers intensify. Men rock back and forth, beads clutched tight, lips moving frantically. Tears streak through grime on weathered faces. The shared desperation is palpable, a physical force pressing down like the fog. You focus on your tiny candle flame, willing it to burn straight. Just let me see land. Just let me feel solid earth once more. A wave slaps the hull, spraying cold salt mist over the kneeling forms. Several candles gutter and die, including yours. The wick smokes, dead. A collective groan rises. Old Finn's chant falters. Silas shifts his weight, the momentary piety evaporating from his face, replaced by familiar impatience. Father Anselm raises his voice, trying to recapture the fervor. But the spell is broken. The sideways smoke from your candle feels like a verdict. Enough, Silas finally barks, his voice rough. Back to stations. Or do you think prayers furl the sails? The crew scrambles up, the fragile unity shattered. Men avoid each other's eyes, the shared terror now laced with fresh suspicion. Who faltered? Whose faith was weak? Who carries death's seed? The wooden St. Roch figure lies discarded on the deck, forgotten. Father Anselm clutches his cross, looking lost and very small. You stare at the cold, waxy stub in your hand. The brief squall of faith has passed, leaving only the familiar dread, colder and deeper than before. The mist thickens, swallowing the stern. The St. Anne sails on, a floating sepulcher carrying its cargo of fear and fading hope deeper into the silent gray sea. The only prayers now are the creak of the timbers and the relentless, hungry whisper of the water against the hull. Father Anselm clutches his cross, looking lost and very small. You stare at the cold, waxy stub in your hand. The brief squall of faith has passed, leaving only the familiar dread, colder and deeper than before. The mist thickens, swallowing the stern. The St. Anne sails on, a floating sepulcher carrying its cargo of fear and fading hope deeper into the silent gray sea. The only prayers now are the creak of the timbers and the relentless, hungry whisper of the water against the hull. Midnight bleeds into the deepest watch. The St. Anne groans, a weary beast adrift in a sea of ink. Mist clings like wet wool, muffling the creak of timbers, the flap of slack sails. A hand shakes you roughly awake in the suffocating hold. Not Silas, but Davy, the gaunt sailmender. His face is a skull shadow in the dim fish oil light. Burial detail. You and me. Move quiet. His whisper rasps like sand on stone. No explanation needed. The words hang unspoken. Gems gone. or someone else. You stumble after him, legs stiff, heart hammering against ribs. The cold deck planking shocks your bare feet. Mist swallows the stern. Only the bow lantern casts a feeble, swaying pool of light. Silas stands there, a darker shadow, arms crossed. At his feet, a long, stiff shape, wrapped tightly in coarse, tarred sailcloth. Rough twine binds it, a clumsy shroud. Only the outline suggests a human form. The curve of a shoulder, the blunt end of feet. No face, no name, just cargo for the deep. Mainstream historical fact. Sea burials at night were standard for plague victims. A grim practicality minimizing crew panic and, they believed, reducing miasmatic contamination. Bodies were weighted with ballast stones sewn into the shroud to ensure sinking. You see the lumpy contours near the feet. Quirky tidbit? Sailors swore blindfolded corpses would wander the seabed, so they always left one eye, uncovered in the shroud. A chilling detail you hope Davy forgot. The cloth is tightly wrapped. No eyes peer out. Silas jerks his chin. Bow rail, quick and quiet. No hymns. Davy grabs the shoulders. You the feet. The body is terrifyingly light, rigid as timber. Cold radiates through the rough canvas. You feel the unnatural angles beneath. Knees locked, head bent forward. The smell is faint here, masked by tar and sea mist. But your mind fills in the blanks. The sweet rot stench of ruptured buboes. Your stomach clenches. 3 dark jokes flicker, defense against horror. 1. Calling this night shift overtime. 2. Dubbing the shrouded shape, the silent passenger. 3. Silas's no hymns rule as the bosun's bedtime policy. You shuffle forward, the corpse a dead weight between you. The bow rail is slick. The sea below is a black void. Whispering. On 3, Davy mutters. 1, 2. You heave. The body slides over the rail with a soft thump against the hull, then a sudden, profound splash. The sound is obscenely loud in the muffled night. Ripples vanish instantly into the darkness. Gone, just like that. Jem, or whoever lay inside that canvas cocoon, swallowed by the indifferent sea. No marker, no prayer, just the splash, then silence. Mainstream fact. The psychological toll of disposing of crewmates, often friends, contributed to high rates of melancholy and desertion aboard plague ships. A despair called the sailor's black bile in logs. You stare into the black water, seeing only the reflection of the swaying lantern. Davy spits over the side. Fair winds, Jem, he rashes. The closest thing to a eulogy. Quit your gawkin', Silas growls low. Another one's brewing in the hole. Check for dawn. He means the sick berth, the dying hole. He stalks aft, melting into the mist. Davy sighs, a sound like rusted hinges. Come on, lad. He leads you not below, but to a stack of damp sailcloth near the forecastle. Sit. Catch your wind. You slump down, trembling. The cold seeps into your bones. The splash echoes in your head. Davy rummages in a pouch, pulls out a small, hard biscuit. Not weevil-free, but he splits it, offering half. You take it numbly. It tastes like ashes. Historians still argue whether these brutal, anonymous burials helped contain disease or merely deepened trauma, accelerating the crew's psychological collapse. Sitting there, the biscuit like dust in your mouth, it feels like the latter. Davy chews slowly, staring into the mist. Seen worse? He murmurs, not looking at you. Off Crete, 41. Cholera ship. We tossed 20 over in one dawn. Sea was thick as stew. He spits again. This is just slow drippin'. Death by the spoonful. He falls silent. The mist presses close, damp and cold. The St. Anne creaks, a lonely sound. Somewhere below, a cough echoes. Thin, weak, the next candidate for the shroud. You shiver, pulling your thin tunic tighter. The biscuit sits heavy in your gut. Davy finally stands, joints popping. Right. Sick berth. Best get it done. He doesn't sound eager. You follow him to the small, low hatch near the bow. The entrance to the forecastle locker. The reek that wafts out is concentrated horror. Voided bowels, sour sweat, and the cloying sweetness of decay. Davy lights a small lantern, its flame guttering wildly in the foul air as he ducks inside. You hesitate, breathing through your mouth, tasting only death. Then you crouch and follow him down into the pit. The air is thick, hot, suffocating. Two shapes huddle on thin straw pallets. One is deathly still. The other stirs, turns a fever-bright face towards the light. It's not Jem. It's the young sailor who'd snatched the extra biscuit days ago. His eyes are wide, unseeing, sweat plastering hair to his skull. A massive bubo swells grotesquely under his jaw, stretching the skin tight and shiny. He whimpers, a sound like a wounded kitten. Ma? Ma? It's dark. Davy swears softly. Right, lad, he says. Voice rough, but unexpectedly gentle. Just rest. He checks the still form, a touch to the neck, a shake of his head. Silas will need 2 shrouds before dawn. You back out of the hole, scrambling onto the deck, gulping the cold, misty air like a drowning man. The splash still echoes. Now there will be 2. The St. Anne sails on, carrying less living cargo with every watch. The dead man's duty is never done. The mist clings like a shroud as dawn bleeds gray light over the St. Anne's deck. Captain Thorne stands rigid by the stern rail, a silhouette etched against the formless sea. His hands grip the worn wood, knuckles pale. He doesn't turn as Silas approaches, boots heavy on the damp planks. The bosun's report is a low, grim monotone. Jem gone. Young Willem in the hole, fever broke last night. Old man Hodge, cold before dawn. 2 shrouds ready. Captain Thorne doesn't flinch. His gaze stays fixed on the horizon, invisible in the murk. And the crew? He asks, voice gravelly with fatigue, half showing the fear. Captain, rest just. Hollow. Elias looks ready to jump. Mainstream historical fact. Ship captains during plague outbreaks faced impossible choices. Balancing morale, dwindling manpower, and the chilling calculus of survival odds. Often documented in terse, grim log entries that reveal the burden of command. Thorne finally turns. His face is haggard, eyes shadowed pits, but his voice carries steel. Isolate the sick. Strict. Rations stay full for the strong. We lose more hands to panic than pestilence, Silas. See to it. The order spreads like cold water. Sailors who shared Willem's mess bucket yesterday now avoid the forecastle like a leper colony. The hatch to the sick berth stays barred, except for Davy's grim deliveries of water and hardtack. You see Willem once, a feverish wraith pressed against a small, grimy porthole, his breath fogging the thick glass, eyes wide and lost. Hope is quarantined with the dying. Quirky tidbit? Some captains kept caged birds below decks, believing they'd die before humans if bad air thickened. An early, flawed canary in the coal mine concept. Thorn has no birds, only the creak of timbers and the rattle from the forecastle. 3 light jokes feel like treason. 1. Calling the quarantine the unpopular cabin. 2. Dubbing Silas enforcing it the hospitality enforcer. 3. The barred hatch as Willem's window seat. Duty pulls you into the suffocating belly of the orlop deck later. Rats scatter like spilled beads as your lantern light cuts through the gloom near the grain barrels. Their numbers have swelled, old, and fat. You see them gnawing at sack corners, hear their skittering chorus in the walls. Panic isn't just above, it's breeding here, on 4 legs with needle teeth. Silas appears at the ladder, holding a dented lantern and a sack. Ratcatcher detail. You. Me. Now. His face is grim. He tosses you a heavy, nail-studded cudgel. See him? Brain him. No sport. Just kill. Mainstream fact. Medieval ships were notoriously infested. A single rat pair could produce 15 zero descendants in a year, and their fleas were the true vectors of Yersinia pestis. Though this link wouldn't be understood for centuries, your cudgel feels clumsy, brutal. The hunt begins. Silas moves with terrifying efficiency, his own club a blur of iron and splintered wood. Thud. A rat bursts like an overripe berry. Crack. Another spine snaps. He's a machine of extermination. You lag, swinging wildly at darting shadows. A large rat, sleek and black, pauses on a barrel, beady eyes reflecting your light. You swing. It leaps, vanishing into a dark crevice. Your club smashes the barrel stave instead. Rage and fear fuel your next swings, less clumsy, more desperate. Thump. You connect, feeling the sickening give of fur and bone. Historians still argue whether organized rat killing on plague ships had any real impact, given the sheer scale of infestation and the flea's ability to jump hosts. Silas doesn't debate. He kills. You kill. The air thickens with the coppery stink of rodent blood and the musky reek of fear. 3 rats. 5. 10. The sack Silas carries grows heavy, wet. It's a losing battle. For every one killed, a dozen more scurry deeper into the ship's cancerous bowels, exhausted, covered in foul spray. You pause near the bilge pump. Silas wipes gore from his face with a grimy sleeve. Useless, he spits, hefting the squirming sack. Like bailing the ocean, but orders. He gestures with his chin towards the ladder. Toss him over. Then scrub. Vinegar, head to toe. You haul the sack up, the weight shifting unnervingly. On deck, the mist has thinned to ragged veils. You open the sack at the rail. Rats tumble out, some still twitching, into the gray sea. Gulls scream, diving instantly, tearing at the floating carnage. Nature's cleanup crew. You watch, numb. Silas throws a bucket of harsh vinegar water at your feet. Scrub, maggot. Every inch. The acid sting on your skin feels like penance. As you scour rat blood from your arms, a shout rings from the crow's nest. A raw, hopeful sound you haven't heard in days. Sail. Sail to starboard. Heads snap up. Men stumble to the rail, peering into the thinning mist. A shape emerges. Not a merchant cog, but the sleek, predatory lines of a war galley. Oars dipping in unison, its sails taut. The Lion of St. Mark flies from its mast. Venetian. Hope flares, wild and desperate. Rescue? Aid? Then you see the flag snapping beneath the lion, a stark black banner with a white cross, the quarantine flag, and smaller, hastily rigged pennants, red crosses painted on white cloth. Plague keep off. The galley alters course sharply, oars digging deep, putting distance between itself and the St. Anne, the clear water widening like a moat of fear. The hopeful shouts die. Men sag against the rails. Silas spits over the side, towards the fleeing galley. Cowards, he growls, but it lacks conviction. Even he understands. You stare at the shrinking warship, the vinegar drying cold on your skin, the rat blood washed away, but the stain of abandonment settling deep. The St. Anne is a pariah, a floating tomb, alone on a sea, suddenly vast and terribly empty. The only company now is the dead, the dying, and the rats waiting below. The galley's wake fades into the mist, taking with it the last fragile hope of rescue. The St. Anne drifts, sails slack, a ghost ship in truth now. Silence hangs heavier than the humid air. Even the gulls have abandoned you, following the Venetian's wake for better pickings. You slump against the rail, vinegar stinging your skin, watching the empty horizon. The rat blood is gone, but the phantom itch of fleas lingers. Mainstream historical fact. Medieval quarantine protocols, quarantino, originated in Venice, requiring ships to anchor offshore for 40 days before landing. A period often just long enough for plague to burn through crews, leaving vessels full of corpses. The Venetians clearly know the St. Anne is fate. Their fleeing oars write the verdict on the water. Already dead, just still breathing, Davy appears beside you, his face gray with fatigue. He offers a dented tin cup of something steaming. Tea, well, hot water with a whisper of ginger. Better not. The warmth seeps into your hands, the faint spice barely cutting the stale water taste. You sip gratefully. Davy l'enclose, voice dropping. Captain's called the officers. Behind closed doors. His eyes flick toward the stern cabin. That's never good. Quirky tidbit? Sailors believed heated debates in closed cabins summoned storm demons, hence the saying, tempest in a teapot. No storms brew yet, but the air feels charged. 3 weak jokes. 1. Calling the ginger water Davy's Deluxe Brew. 2. The officers' meeting as the secret storm session. 3. The vanished galley as Venetian social distancing. The stern cabin door creaks open. First, Mate Graves emerges, face like stone. Then Elias, the barber surgeon, looking queasy. Finally, Silas, his usual scowl deepened into something darker. He barks orders. All hands. Captain speaks. The crew shuffles aft, a ragged, hollow-eyed assembly. Captain Thorne steps onto the quarterdeck, his posture rigid, hands clasped behind his back. The wind tugs at his salt-stained doublet. He surveys his men, his gaze lingering on the thin, the pale, the ones trying to hide tremors. When he speaks, his voice carries, stripped bare of pretense. We are in the crucible, men. A pause. The ship groans. Venice won't be the last to shun us. Our choice is narrow. Another pause. Heavier. So we choose. Historians still debate whether captains who knowingly sailed plague, infected ships committed mass murder, or desperate acts of survival when no ports would grant refuge. Thorne's jaw tightens. The strong will live. The weak cannot drag us all down. No one breathes. We separate. Tonight, The plan unfolds with chilling precision. The forecastle sick berth will be expanded. All showing symptoms go in. The healthy crew moves aft. Rations split accordingly. Guards posted. No contact. The words hang in the air. Let them die apart so we may live. A murmur ripples through the crew. Fear, relief, guilt. Willem's face appears at the forecastle porthole, gaunt and gleaming with sweat. He hears. He understands. His palm slaps the thick glass once. A sound like a muffled heartbeat. Then he vanishes into the gloom. Mainstream fact. The practice of isolating the sick, cordon sanitaire, predates germ theory. Born of raw observation that proximity to plague victims often meant death, though the mechanism, fleas, not bad air, remained a mystery. Thorne's orders are medieval triage at its most brutal. You're assigned to the aft crew, not because you're healthy, though you are, miraculously, so far, but because Silas needs hands to rig a makeshift barrier between decks. Heavy sailcloth soaked in vinegar, nailed to beams, a flimsy wall against death. The work is frantic, sweat slick. Every cough from the forecastle makes men flinch. The barricade rises, crude but definitive. A border between the living and the living dead. Quirky detail? Sailors crossing such barriers often held cloves or pepper in their mouths, believing strong tastes warded off plague, vapors. You see men chewing furiously as they pass the barrier. You pocket a few cloves from the cook's stash, just in case. Dusk falls. The barrier complete. The aft crew huddles near the mainmast, chewing their meager rations. Slightly larger portions now, reclaimed from the sick share. The math is cold. Fewer mouths, more food. No one speaks of it. No one speaks at all. The silence is punctuated only by the occasional thump or muffled cry from beyond the barrier. Then, near midnight, a new sound. A slow, rhythmic thud, thud, thud against the sailcloth. Someone, Willem, pounding weakly. It continues, relentless, a dying heartbeat. Men stuff rags in their ears. You press your hands over yours, but the sound seeps in, syncopated with the creak of timbers. Thud, creak, thud, creak. The St. Anne's new rhythm, the soundtrack of surrender. You stare at the cloves in your palm, tiny and brown, utterly powerless. Outside, the mist thickens. The sea sighs. The stars, if they still exist, are hidden. Somewhere beyond the barrier, a man pounds on the wall between life and death, and no one answers. The pounding against the sailcloth barrier fades with the watch, replaced by a new, deeper rhythm, shaking the St. Anne's bones. The wind rises, first a moan in the rigging, then a shriek. The mist shreds, revealing bruised purple clouds boiling across the sky. The sea, flat and leaden hours before, heaves into steep, angry mountains capped with foaming white. The storm hits like a hammer blow. One moment, eerie calm. The next, chaos. The St. Anne groans, the sound of tortured timber. She rolls violently to starboard, decks tilting sickeningly. You slam into the mainmast, grabbing rigging to stay upright. Cold salt spray explodes over the rail, drenching you instantly. Rain lashes horizontally, stinging like needles. Mainstream historical fact. Medieval ships like cogs were notoriously poor sailors in heavy weather. High-sided, slow to respond, prone to broaching or capsizing in following seas. A well-crewed ship was a gamble. A plague ship, undermanned and terrified, was a death wish. Captain Thorne's voice cuts through the din, raw and urgent. All hands. Reef sails. Secure loose gear. Move. Silas materializes like a waterlogged demon, bellowing orders, drowned by the wind's roar. Men scramble, slipping on the rain-slick deck, fighting the bucking motion. You lurch towards the foremast, fighting for every step against the wind and the ship's wild pitching. The task: help reef the mainsail, haul in the heavy, sodden canvas before the wind shreds it or capsizes them. Ropes burn through your wet hands. Rain and seawater blur your vision. The sail fights back like a living thing, cracking like cannon fire overhead. Quirky tidbit? Sailors believed whistling on deck summoned storms. So men worked in grim, superstitious silence, even amidst the howling gale. Only grunts and curses escape now. 3 desperate jokes flash. 1. Calling the deck tilt, the bosun's funhouse slide. 2. Dubbing the rain, Neptune's spit bath. 3. The fighting sail, as the wet ghost wrestle. A terrified scream pierces the storm's fury, not from the aft crew, but forward, beyond the barrier, the forecastle, the sick berth. The St. Anne plunges into a deep trough, then climbs a monstrous wave. As she crests, the bow lifts high, then crashes down with shuddering force. There's a splintering crack, sharp, even against the wind. The flimsy, vinegar-soaked sailcloth barrier tears like paper. Barrels, tools, and human shapes tumble out from the forecastle opening. The sick, unable to brace themselves, spilled onto the open, heaving deck by the violent motion. Willem slides across the streaming planking, clutching a stanchion, his face a mask of terror and fever. Another man, unrecognizable, rolls helplessly towards the starboard rail, shrieking as he hits the bulwark. Historians still debate whether captains deliberately neglected sick compartments during storms, seeing it as a brutal form of natural selection. Watching Willem cling for life, Thorne's face is stone. "Get those men secured," Thorne bellows, pointing at the forecastle opening, not the sick men scattered like driftwood. "Priority: seal the breach, prevent swamping." You and 2 others stagger towards the torn barrier. Rain and spray blind you. The deck bucks like a stallion. You grab a corner of the heavy, wet canvas, fighting to pull it back over the gaping hole. A wave explodes over the bow, a wall of green water. It knocks you off your feet, slamming you into the base of the foremast. Salt water fills your nose, your mouth. You choke, gasping, blinded. Hands grab your tunic, hauling you up. Davy, his face streaming water. "Hold on, lad, hold." He shoves a hammer into your hand. "Nail it. Fast." You fumble with thick nails, swinging wildly at the wood frame as the ship bucks. The canvas whips like a live thing. Another man appears. Silas, a coil of rope over his shoulder. He bodily shoves a writhing, feverish sailor back towards the forecastle opening, ignoring the man's cries. "Get inside or go over," he roars. He lashes the torn canvas edge with brutal efficiency, securing it temporarily with the rope, creating a smaller, ragged opening instead of a gaping maw. "Barrel, wedge it," he orders. You shove a small, empty water cask into the gap. It holds, barely. Mainstream fact. Storm survival often depended on improvised repairs and sheer brute force. Naval architecture offered little margin for error against a North Atlantic gale. The St. Anne shudders, taking another wave broadside. Water cascades across the deck, sweeping towards the scuppers. You look back. Willem is gone. Where he clung, only churning water sluices over the deck. A broken sandal spins in the current near the rail. Further aft, the other sick man lies motionless, wedged against a capstan, head at an unnatural angle. The storm hasn't discriminated. It's taken both the condemned and precious deck space. The wind screams its victory. Silas shoves you towards the aft. Move! Secure the helm lines. You stumble away from the breached forecastle. The temporary patch, holding for now. The storm rages on, indifferent to plague, to barriers, to the tiny sparks of human life clinging to the soaked, shuddering deck of the St. Anne. The only prayer now is for the timbers to hold, the waves to relent, and the dawn to find them still afloat. The pounding against the barrier is silenced, replaced by the ocean's relentless, crushing fists. The storm's fury finally exhausts itself near dawn, leaving behind a bruised sky, a heaving but manageable sea, and a deck strewn with tangled ropes, splintered wood, and the grim absence of Willem and the other sick man. The air feels raw, scrubbed clean by the tempest, but the old stench, vinegar, rot, fear, seeps back quickly from below. Exhaustion weighs heavier than the sodden clothes clinging to your skin. Silas barks orders. Clear this wreckage. Bilge pumps manned. Cook. Get a fire lit. Hot broth now. Hot broth. The words feel alien. A relic from a world before rats and shrouds. You're assigned galley duty. Not by choice, but because your hands are steady. And cook, a hulking, pock-scarred man named Boren, glares at anyone trembling. The galley is a cramped, smoke-blackened cave amidships, perpetually greasy and smelling of ancient fish fat, burnt porridge, and the sharp tang of preserved onions. Boren thrusts a massive wooden spoon into your hands and gestures towards a vast, soot-encrusted cauldron bubbling over a newly kindled, sputtering fire. Stir. Don't stop. Don't let it burn. Burn it. You swim with Willem. Mainstream historical fact. Ship's cooks were often former fighters or criminals given the job as an alternative to worse duties. Their culinary skills were usually negligible, focused purely on preventing starvation or mutiny via quantity over quality. Boran fits the mold perfectly. The broth is thin, grayish water, with islands of tough barley grains and dubious shreds of salted pork bobbing like pale, drowned insects. Your job, keep it moving. The rhythmic scraping of the spoon against the pot's bottom becomes a numb mantra. Hey, scrape. Stir. Scrape. Stir. Steam condenses on the low ceiling, dripping back into the cauldron or onto your head. Quirky tidbit? Sailors swore stirring counterclockwise summoned sea demons, so you stir clockwise, meticulously, under Boren's suspicious eye. He hacks at a sack of hardtack biscuits nearby, his cleaver striking the wood block with jarring thwacks, reducing the rock-hard slabs to splintered chunks he tosses into a growing pile. Weevils scatter. He ignores them. 3 light jokes are born of fatigue. 1. Calling the broth Boren's seawater surprise. 2. The fleeing weevils as the biscuit brigade deserting. 3. Your stirring as the demon avoidance dance. Boren works silently for a while, his massive shoulders hunched. Then, as he tosses another weevil-laden chunk, he speaks. His voice a low rumble, barely audible over the fire's crackle and the spoon's scrape. Seen the stores? He doesn't look at you. Barley's half weevil. Salt pork. Less pork, more salt. Green fuzz on the cheese. He spits into the fire. It sizzles angrily. Captain knows. Silas knows. Running on prayers and rat dropping soon. He pauses, his cleaver hovering, His eyes dart towards the galley door, then back to you, sharp and surprisingly fearful. Heard talk after the storm about the cargo. He lowers his voice further. The shrouded ones, Silas and Davy, they waited improper? Or he trails off, letting the implication hang. The rumor from the storm's chaos. Were the bodies truly sunk? Or conserved? Historians still fiercely debate whether the extreme privation on plague ships ever led to corpse recycling, with scholars divided between outright dismissal and grim acknowledgement of starvation's desperate logic. Oren's wide, haunted eyes suggest he believes the worst. Heard whispers. Long pig makes the pork stretch. He shudders, a massive frame rattled by pure dread. Stir faster. The spoon feels suddenly heavy, greasy. The gray broth churns, the shreds of pale meat swirling. Your stomach, empty and knotted with fatigue, clenches violently. Is it pork? Or something dredged from the cold, dark hold? Oren sees your expression. He snorts, a harsh, humorless sound. Don't faint, maggot. Probably just rat. Plump ones down there. He slams the cleaver down, splitting a biscuit with unnerving force. Probably. He doesn't sound convinced. Mainstream fact. Accusations of cannibalism were shockingly common during medieval famines and sieges, often arising from mass hysteria and the dehumanizing effects of extreme trauma, whether true or not. The fear itself was corrosive. You keep stirring. S. Scrape. Stir. Scrape. Stir. The rhythmic sound is the only anchor. The broth is deemed done, a relative term. Oren ladles it into battered wooden bowls. You carry them out onto the deck, the steam warming your face but doing nothing for the chill in your bones. Men huddle in small groups, shivering, their eyes hollow. They take the bowls without thanks, slurping the hot liquid greedily, chasing the weevil dust biscuits. You see them eyeing the shreds of meat, a flicker of something in their eyes. Suspicion, hunger, resignation. Nobody asks what kind of meat. Nobody wants to know. You deliver a bowl to Silas near the helm. He takes it, grunts, his gaze fixed on the empty horizon. Keep the fire banked, he orders, voice flat. More tonight. You nod, retreating. Historians argue. Oren whispers. The crew eats in silence. The truth of the pork is lost in the gray sea mist, but the seed is planted. As you scrape the empty cauldron later, the residue clinging to the spoon looks unnervingly thick and greasy. Boren watches you clean it, his face unreadable in the smoky gloom. Remember, maggot, he murmurs. So low you almost miss it. The hungrier you get, the less you ask, and the less you want to know. He turns back to his cleaver. Thwack. Another biscuit shatters. The sound echoes the splintering of something else aboard the St. Anne. Trust. Sanity. The line between survival and savagery, dissolving like salt in the thin, greasy broth. The galley fire sputters. The only certainty is the gnawing hunger, and the terrifying question swirling in the pot. What fills the bowl tomorrow? Sleep is a fractured thing. Visions twist through your mind. Boren's haunted eyes, the gray broth swirling with unnameable shreds. Willem's hand slapping the glass. The Venetian galley shrinking on the horizon. You shiver violently, curling tighter. The chill isn't external. It's inside, burrowing into your marrow. You feel hot, then freezing, your skin prickling with goose flesh despite the sweat beading on your brow. A dull ache blossoms under your right arm. You shift, trying to ease the pressure. The movement sends a sharp twinge through your armpit. Your hand instinctively goes there, probing through the rough fabric. And you feel it. A lump, small, hard, and fiercely tender beneath the skin, like a buried walnut. Your breath hitches. Ice floods your veins, colder than the North Sea. No, not me. Not yet. The denial screams silently in your skull. You press harder, willing it to be a bruise, a strained muscle, anything but that. But the shape is unmistakable. A bubo. Plague's grim signature. You've seen them on Gem, on Willem, on the nameless shapes hauled away in shrouds. You've seen them on Gem, on Willem, on the nameless shapes hauled away in shrouds. Now it's yours. Quirky tidbit? Some desperate souls tried to draw out buboes by strapping live pigeons or plump frogs against the swelling, believing the creatures would absorb the corruption. You'd laugh if terror wasn't closing your throat. 3 dark jokes claw for purchase. 1. Calling the lump your personal storm cloud. 2. Dubbing the pigeon cure the feathered compress. 3. Thinking your fever chills as nature's way of saving firewood. You lie perfectly still, eyes squeezed shut, pretending sleep. Every sense screams. The snores of nearby men sound thunderous. The creak of the timbers feels accusatory. Your mind races. How long days? Hours? Mainstream fact. The time from first symptom, fever, chills, to visible bubo development could be as little as 12 hours in mnemonic plague variants. Though bubonic forms often took 6 days, your timeline is terrifyingly compressed. Silas will know. Davy will see it in your eyes. Thorn will point to the forecastle, the dying hole. Images flood you. The cramped, reeking dark. The moans, the final suffocating isolation. Willem's face at the porthole, the pounding against the barrier. The splash. A fresh wave of fever-induced nausea rolls over you. You swallow bile, the sour taste mixing with the phantom grease of Boren's broth. Historians still fiercely debate whether the psychological terror of discovering a bubo accelerated death as much as the disease itself. A self-fulfilling prophecy of despair. Lying here, the lump pulsing with your frantic heartbeat, you believe it. Every cough from the forecastle sounds like your future. Every shuffle on deck feels like Silas coming for you. You try to regulate your breathing, to hide the shivers racking your frame. Play healthy, just a little longer. But the fever is a betrayer. Sweat soaks your tunic. A dry cough escapes your lips before you can stifle it. The man next to you, Davy, stirs, muttering in his sleep. You freeze, heart hammering against your ribs. Did he hear? Does he sense the heat radiating off you? You curl tighter, turning your face away, shielding your right side. The bubo throbs, a constant, accusing pulse beneath your arm. Weighted shrouds, green cheese, Boren's whisper. The hungrier you get, the less you ask. The fragments whirl in your fevered mind. Dawn feels impossibly distant. The stars, glimpsed briefly between scudding clouds, seem cold and indifferent. You're marked, not by Silas's press gang, but by the invisible enemy that stalked the St. Anne since Bristol. The floating coffin has claimed another soul. The only question now is how long you can hide in plain sight, shivering on the deck, before the dying hole beckons, and the splash awaits. The chill deepens. The lump burns. The long night stretches ahead, minute by agonizing minute, as the plague ship sails on, carrying you towards your inevitable, shuddering end. The deck tilts beneath you, Or maybe it's the fever warping the world. Dawn bleeds gray light through your eyelids, but opening them feels like lifting anchors. Your tunic is plastered to your skin sweat or sea spray. It's all salt and sickness now. That lump under your arm pulses like a second heart, hot and angry. You try to shift, to hide it deeper against the mast, but a spasm of chills locks your muscles. A cough tears loose, raw and wet, echoing in the sudden stillness of the morning watch. Footsteps stop beside you. You don't need to look. You feel Silas's shadow before you see it. Cold as a shroud. His boot prods your ribs. Up, maggot. Deck ain't a sickbed. His voice is flat, but his eyes flinty and sharp rake over your trembling form, lingering on the hand you've instinctively clamped over your right armpit. Mainstream historical fact. Authorities on plague ships were trained to spot the early tokens on natural lethargy. Flushed skin, and the telltale guarding of lymph nodes. You're a walking billboard. Just tired, bosun, you rasp, forcing yourself upright. The world swims. Nausea churns the thin broth in your gut. Storm took it out of me. Silas doesn't blink. Hands off your side. Now. It's not a request. It's a death sentence. Slowly, trembling, you lower your arm. The rough wool of your tunic stretches taut over the visible swell beneath your armpit. A collective inhale whispers from the nearby crew. Men shuffle back. Davy's face appears behind Silas, etched with pity and grim understanding. Quirky tidbit? Some sailors try to disguise buboes with poultices of crushed beetles mixed with tar, hoping to fool officers long enough to reach port. You have no beetles, only terror. 3 jokes flicker like dying embers. 1. Calling the bubo your personal storm surge. 2. Silas's inspection as the bosun's wellness check. 3. The crew's retreat as applying social distancing. Medieval edition. Silas doesn't touch it. He doesn't need to. The swollen outline is confession enough. His jaw tightens. Forecastle. Move. No roar. Just icy finality. Davy steps forward, but Silas waves him off. I'll handle this scrap. He grabs your upper arm knot roughly, but with terrifying efficiency hauling you upright. Your legs buckle. The world tilts violently. He drags more than escorts you across the wet planking, your boots scuffing helplessly. Historians still fiercely debate whether the brutal speed of isolating the sick saved lives or merely hastened the doomed into despair, stripping them of dignity before death. The vinegar-soaked sailcloth barrier looms ahead, its crude stitches visible from the storm's repair. It looks less like a partition now, more like the ragged maw of a beast. Silas yells toward the forecastle hatch. Open up! Got fresh company. A barred slot slides open, eyes wide and bloodshot peer out from darkness. A bolt clunks. The hatch groans inward, releasing a gust of air so thick with decay it makes the deck stench seem like spring meadows. Unwashed bodies, voided bowels, pus, and the cloying sweetness of rotting flesh. It hits you like a physical blow. You gag, doubling over. Get in. Silas shoves you toward the opening. No ceremony, no farewell, just expulsion. You stumble over the high threshold, falling onto hands and knees on slimy planking inside. The hatch slams shut behind you. The bolt slides home with a sound like a coffin lid sealing. Thud, clunk, darkness, almost absolute. Only a sliver of gray light leaks from a small, high porthole crusted with salt. The air is hot, thick, suffocating. The reek is indescribable, a living thing that coats your tongue, your lungs. Moans weave through the gloom. Someone whimpers. Another cough so wet. Rattling sound that ends in a gasp. Mainstream fact. Sick berths were often the ship's most poorly ventilated spaces, intentionally chosen to contain miasma, but effectively becoming gas chambers where plague, dysentery, and despair fermented. Your eyes adjust slowly. Shapes resolve on the floor. Men curled on thin, sodden straw pallets. A gaunt figure rocks back and forth, whispering nonsense to the bulkhead. In the corner, a still form lies under a stained blanket. Near the porthole, where the light is strongest, a young man you don't recognize stares blankly at the ceiling. A massive, livid bubo distorting his neck. Willem's space lies empty beside him. The straw trampled and foul. Someone cleared his body, but not his memory. This is the dying hole, and you've just been thrown into its reeking heart. The deck groans beneath you. The Saint Anne sails on. Your world has shrunk to darkness, decay, and the relentless, burning pulse beneath your arm. The splash awaits. You just don't hear it yet. Darkness isn't empty here. It's thick, liquid, pressing into your eyes, your mouth, your lungs with every breath. That first choking gasp of putrid air sweat, sickness, and something sweetly rotten lingers like a taste you can't swallow away. You stay on hands and knees, the slimy deck planking cold and wet beneath your palms. Shapes move in the gloom. A slow shuffle, a pained roll. The glint of eyes reflecting the thin gray light from the salt-crusted porthole. Moans weave together, a low, discordant hymn of the damned. Someone nearby mutters, "Ma, the bread's burnt," over and over. You force yourself up, back against the curved hull. The wood is slick with condensation, or worse, the bubo under your arm pulses, a hot coal sewn into your flesh. Every heartbeat hammers against it. Mainstream historical fact. Infected lymph nodes, bubos, could swell to the size of apples, causing excruciating pressure and often rupturing internally, flooding the body with toxins. Yours feels like a clenched fist. A figure detaches from the shadows. Near the porthole-leathed young man, with the neck bubo. He shuffles closer, movements stiff and puppet-like. His eyes are glassy, unfocused, but they fix on you. "New?" he rasps, voice like gravel in a tin cup. You nod. He manages a ghastly smile, revealing blackened gums. "Welcome to the parlor." He gestures vaguely at the reeking darkness. "I'm Kit. Was Prentice Chandler for this." He sways, catching himself on a beam. Water buckets there. He points a trembling finger towards a shadowed corner where a wooden pail sits. "Share it, or don't. Makes no difference soon." Quirky tidbit? Dying plague victims sometimes reported seeing spectral ships or phantom harbors visions, interpreted as either divine mercy or the devil's final taunt. Kit's gaze drifts past you, towards the hull. "Can ye hear the bells?" Bristol bells. Historians still fiercely debate whether these hallucinations were fever-induced, manifestations of profound spiritual longing, or simply the brain drowning in toxins. 3 bleak observations. The shared bucket as the democracy of thirst. Kit's phantom bells as the auditory exit sign. The slimy hull as the world's worst headboard. You crawl to the bucket. The water inside is cloudy, with a faint, greasy sheen. Dipping a cracked wooden ladle, you drink. It tastes stale, faintly metallic, better than nothing. The act of swallowing sends a fresh wave of nausea rolling through you. Kit watches, then coughs violently, doubling over, a sound like tearing cloth. He spits something dark onto the deck between his feet. Time warps. Minutes stretch into hours marked only by the ship's groans, the worsening symphony of suffering, and the sliver of light shifting across the porthole. The man whispering about burnt bread falls silent. His breathing stops a quiet, final rattle. No one moves to cover him. Death is just another occupant. Mainstream fact. Mortality rates in plague confinement zones like this could exceed 80% within days, fueled by the concentration of disease, lack of care, and psychological abandonment. Apathy hangs thicker than the stench. Later may be hours, maybe moments, a heavy thump sounds against the hull near the porthole. Then another splash, silence, splash. A rhythmic, grim punctuation from the deck above. Burials. Kit flinches with each splash. That's the language here, he whispers, his voice weaker. Splash means room for one more. He stares at the unmoving form nearby. His turn soon. Historians argue whether the constant sound of burials hastened death among the isolated by reinforcing hopelessness, or if the dying were beyond such nuances. Kit's haunted eyes suggest the former. The hatch bolt scrapes. A sliver of harsh daylight stabs into the gloom. Silas's silhouette fills the opening, holding a bucket. He doesn't enter. Water. He barks, sloshing it just inside the threshold. He shoves a small sack after it. Hardtack. Make it last. His eyes scan the dark interior, lingering on Kit, on you, on the still form. No sympathy, just inventory. He spots the dead man. Davy. Got one ripe. Bag him. Davy's gaunt face appears behind Silas, resigned. He steps in just far enough to grab the corpse's ankles, dragging it swiftly towards the hatch. The body leaves a damp trail on the planking. Silas watches, expressionless. Rest of ye, keep your pestilence to yourselves. The hatch slams. Bolt slides. Darkness reclaims its territory, heavier now with absence. The splashes resume shortly after. Thump, splash. Kit starts laughing. A thin, wheezing, broken sound that turns into another coughing fit. When it subsides, he's crying silently, tears cutting tracks through the grime on his cheeks. Room for one more, he repeats, staring at the spot where the dead man lay. He fumbles at his belt, pulls out a long strip of dirty frayed linen. A winding sheet. He starts folding it meticulously, hands shaking, preparing. He hums a tune, a tuneless fragment of a shanty. The sound is more terrifying than the moans. The bubo under your arm throbs in time with the splashes from above. Thump, splash, throb. The vinegar stench of the hold below seems to seep up through the deck, mixing with the death smell. Kit's humming weaves with the ship's creaks. The world narrows to this. The hot pain, the cold deck, the suffocating dark. The splashes counting down the moments. And Kit's quiet, meticulous folding of his own shroud. The St. Anne sails on. You close your eyes, not against the dark, but against the sight of Kit's trembling hands and the terrible understanding in his glassy eyes. The parlor awaits its next guest. The splash is coming. You just hope Kit goes before you have to hear it for him. Kit's humming fades with the light. The porthole dims from gray to charcoal, then to pitch, Darkness becomes absolute, a suffocating velvet pressing against your eyes. Only sounds remain. The ship's groans, the wet rattle of lungs nearby, Kit's ragged breaths, and the relentless metronome from above. Thump, splash, pause, thump, splash. Death's tide chart. The bubo under your arm burns, a live ember buried in flesh, pulsing with every frantic heartbeat. Fever paints the darkness with swirling colors. Phantom galleons with sails of rotting silk. Bristol's wharves shimmering just beyond the hull. Willem's face melting like tallow. You claw at the slick planking, anchoring yourself to the feel of something real. Mainstream historical fact. High fevers during plague, fibrous ardents, commonly induced vivid hallucinations, blending memory, terror, and wish fulfillment into waking nightmares that felt terrifyingly real. Kit whimpers, a broken sound. Bells can't find the door. Time loses meaning. Hours? Minutes? The fever climbs. Heat radiates from your skin, yet you shiver violently, teeth chattering like dice in a cup. You crawl to the water bucket, plunging your whole head into the tepid, greasy liquid. It offers a second of shocking coolness before the furnace inside roars back. You gulp water, retch it up almost immediately, the meager hardtack long forgotten. Quirky tidbit? Dying sailors sometimes clutched witch bottles, tiny clay vessels filled with urine, nails, and hair, believing they trapped evil spirits causing the fever. You wish you had one, anything to trap this fire. 3 fever dream jokes. The retching is dinner and a show. The water bucket is the plunge pool of despair. Kit's whimpers as the guided meditation track. Then, a shift, like a tide turning. The crushing heat ebbs slowly. The shivering lessens. The phantom ships dissolve. The burning fist under your arm, still there, but duller. A heavy ache instead of a scream. Clarity seeps in, cold and shocking. You can think. The air still reeks, the darkness still presses, but the world feels solid again. Your body is drenched in sweat, weak as a newborn kitten, but the crushing weight of the fever is gone. Mainstream fact. Temporary remissions did occur during plague, sometimes lasting hours or even a day, often cruelly interpreted as divine intervention or a sign of recovery before the final fatal surge. Hope, fragile and treacherous, unfurls in your chest. Did I beat it? You push yourself upright, back against the clammy hull. Your eyes strain, adjusting. Kit lies nearby, a still shadow. No humming, no rasping breaths. Just silence. You reach out, fingers brushing cold, stiff skin. Kit's journey ended in the dark. His folded shroud lies untouched beside him. The splashes above have stopped. Silence hangs heavy, almost worse than the rhythm of death. Historians still fiercely debate whether these brief respites were the body's genuine rallying, or merely the eye of the storm. A cruel illusion granted by the pathogen before the final collapse. Sitting in the silence, Kit's cold hand under your fingertips. Hope feels like a betrayal. The hatch bolt rasps. Light, blinding after the hours of absolute dark, stabs into the forecastle. Davy's silhouette fills the opening, holding a bucket. He surveys the gloom, lantern raised. His gaze lands on Kit's still form, then flicks to you. You meet his eyes, trying to project strength, health. See? I'm sitting. I'm awake. The fever broke. Davy's expression doesn't change. Weariness. Resignation. He steps in just far enough to set down the water bucket and a smaller sack. Rations, he mutters, voice hoarse. His eyes scan your face, your posture. He sees the sweat-soaked tunic, the pallor, but also the alertness. A flicker of something. Surprise? Pity? Ate yet? He asks, gesturing vaguely at the sack. Hardtack dust. You shake your head. Well, eat. He turns to Kit. Sighs. Right. You. He grabs Kit's ankles. The familiar, grim shuffle begins. As Davy drags Kit's stiff form towards the hatch, you lurch forward. Davy, the fever. It's gone. The words tumble out. Desperate. Davy pauses, half turned. He looks back at you. Really looks. His gaunt face is unreadable in the lantern light. He glances at the water bucket you used, the vomit stain nearby. He grunts. Not agreement, not denial. Just a sound. He resumes dragging Kit. At the hatch, he hesitates, doesn't look back. Keep the water in ya, he says, voice low. Then he's gone, hauling Kit into the gray dawn light. The hatch slams. The bolt slides home. Thunk. Silence returns. Deeper now. Kit's absence is a physical void. You crawl to the ration sack. True hardtack this time, not dust. You break off a fragment, force it between dry lips. It's like chewing chalk, but you manage. You sip water. It stays down. Strength infinitesimal trickles back. You stand, swaying, using the hull for support. The bubo aches, but the fire is banked. The crushing fatigue remains, but the mind-numbing fever fog has lifted. You stare at the porthole. Weak gray light filters through the salt crust. Is that blue sky beyond the grime? A sliver of actual blue? Mainstream fact. Medieval sailors often saw weather changes as divine signs. Clearing skies after plague storms were sometimes interpreted as God's mercy finally shining through. You press your face to the cold glass, trying to see. Blue. It is. Blue. And calmer seas. The Saint Anne rides easier. The hatch bolt scrapes again. Not Davy. Silas. He stands framed in the light, his club held loosely. His flinty eyes sweep the forecastle, the empty space where Kit lay, the vomit, the water bucket, and finally, you, standing by the porthole. His gaze narrows, assessing, calculating. On your feet, I see, he states, voice flat. Fever dream over? You nod, not trusting your voice. He takes a step inside, just one, sniffing the air like a hound. His eyes lock onto yours. Good. We're short-handed. Forecastle needs swabbing. Bilge pumps jammed aft. He tosses a stiff bristled deck brush at your feet. It clatters on the planking. Get to it. Now. He doesn't wait for a reply. He steps back, leaving the hatch open. A rectangle of daylight spills in, dazzling. Fresh air, cold and sharp with salt, washes over you, scouring the death stink from your lungs for one glorious, lung-searing breath. You stare at the brush. Work. Short-handed. The words echo. Did the fever truly break? Or is this just another cruel twist, a borrowed hour before the final plunge? Silas didn't ask about the bubo. He saw you standing. That was enough. For now, historians argue the meaning of such moments. You pick up the brush. The wood is rough, solid, real. The bubo throbs dully, a reminder. But the crushing heat is absent. The open hatch beckons. Blue sky, clean air. The splash for Kit is done. Yours, delayed? You take a step towards the light, the brush heavy in your hand. The St. Anne sails on. You're back in the world of the living. For now, the deck awaits. And the bilge, and Silas's watchful, flint-hard eyes. The reprieve, fragile as sea foam, begins. The salt wind slaps your face as you stumble onto the deck, blinking in the blinding gray light. The brush in your hand feels alien, heavy. Silas watches, arms crossed. As you scrub the forecastle deck, where Kit lay sweeping away straw, vomit, and an unidentifiable dark stain with vinegar-soaked sand. The bristles scrape wood grain already etched with years of suffering. Mainstream historical fact. Vinegar, sand scrubbing, sand holing was standard shipboard hygiene, believed to cut through miasma, though it merely masked odors. You work mechanically. The bubo, a dull anchor under your arm. Every pass of the brush whispers, alive. For now, Silas's shadow falls over you. Galley. Now, Boren needs a stirrer. No room for refusal. You drop the brush, follow his rigid back toward the galley's smoke-stained door. The reek shifts charred grain, rancid fat, and beneath it, the ghost of that other smell from Kit's forecastle. Boren stands hunched over his cauldron, stirring a bubbling sludge the color of mud. He glances up, eyes bloodshot. You. He thrusts a long-handled wooden paddle at you. Stir, clockwise. Don't stop. His voice is gravel wrapped in burlap. Quirky titbit cooks enforced clockwise, stirring to confuse sea witches who supposedly poison stews via counterclockwise motions. You grip the paddle, the broth thickens, gluing oats and dubious meat shreds into clumps. Boren leans close, his breath hot and sour. Seen the stores? He murmurs, eyes darting to the galley door. Salt pork's gone, barley's dust, cheese, green fuzz deep as moss. He nods at the cauldron. This is make do, or make believe. Historians still fiercely debate whether famine on plague ships led to taboo protein sources, with logbooks citing extended fish preserves, while whispers spoke of darker substitutions. Boren's stare bores into you. Silas took 3 more last night, weighted him light. Quick splash. He taps the paddle handle. Stir faster. The implication hangs like gallows rope. You stir, knuckles white. The clumps break apart, revealing pale, fibrous strand stew, thick for salt pork, too uniform for fish. Your stomach heaves. Borin says it. He snorts. Rat? Maybe. Plump ones down below. He chops mold off hardtack with violent thwacks. Or maybe long pig. The old rumor. The one from the storm. He watches you flinch. Hunger's a funny thing, boy. Makes you see possibilities. Mainstream fact. Cannibalism accusations peaked during medieval sieges, famines, e.g. Jerusalem 1099, often rooted in trauma-induced hysteria rather than fact. But the terror itself eroded sanity. 3 bleak jokes surface. Boren's chopping as the mold removal service. The stew strands as the mystery meat brigade. His whisper as the dinner menu update. The galley door bangs open. Silas looms, vinegar bucket in hand, swabbing hereafter every corner. His flint eyes scan the cauldron, Boren, your sweat-sheened face. Boren stirs faster, humming tunelessly. Silas's gaze lingers on the stew's surface. Smells strong. Boren grunts. Stretch thin, bosun, like the crew. Silas's jaw tightens. He knows. They all know. The math is inescapable. Fewer mouths, thinning stew, deepening dread. He throws the vinegar bucket down. Clean it. Then bilge pump. Jammed again. He leaves, taking the tension with him. Boren stops humming. He knows, he mutters, scraping burnt sludge from the pot's edge. Just won't say. Captains never do. He nods at the paddle. Keep stirring. Demons hate rhythm. You stir. Clockwise. The paddle scrapes the pot's bottom like a bone on stone. Outside, the crew eats in silence, bowls cradled like secrets. No one asks about the meat. No one meets your eyes. The bubo throbs a reminder your reprieve is borrowed. The stew thickens. The lies deepen. The St. Anne sails on, a ghost ship feeding its ghosts, while you stir the pot and wonder what simmers beneath the surface. The only certainty is the scrape of wood on iron, the reek of vinegar and despair, and the terrifying question, what fills the bowl tonight? The salt wind slaps your face as you stumble onto the deck, blinking in the blinding gray light. The brush in your hand feels alien, heavy. Silas watches, arms crossed, as you scrub the forecastle deck, where Kit lay sweeping away straw, vomit, and an unidentifiable dark stain with vinegar-soaked sand. The bristles scrape wood grain already etched with years of suffering. Mainstream historical fact. Vinegar, sand scrubbing, sand holing, was standard shipboard hygiene, believed to cut through miasma, though it merely masked odors. You work mechanically. The bubo, a dull anchor under your arm. Every pass of the brush whispers, alive. For now, Silas's shadow falls over you. Galley. Now, Boren needs a stirrer. No room for refusal. You drop the brush, follow his rigid back toward the galley's smoke-stained door. The reek shifts charred grain, rancid fat, and beneath it, the ghost of that other smell from Kit's forecastle. Boren stands hunched over his cauldron, stirring a bubbling sludge the color of mud. He glances up, eyes bloodshot. You. He thrusts a long-handled wooden paddle at you. Stir, clockwise. Don't stop. His voice is gravel wrapped in burlap. Quirkitit bit cooks enforced clockwise, stirring to confuse sea witches who supposedly poison stews via counterclockwise motions. You grip the paddle, the broth thickens, gluing oats and dubious meat shreds into clumps. Boren leans close, his breath hot and sour. Seen the stores? He murmurs, eyes darting to the galley door. Salt pork's gone, barley's dust, cheese, green fuzz deep as moss. He nods at the cauldron. This is make do, or make believe. Historians still fiercely debate whether famine on plague ships led to taboo protein sources, with logbooks citing extended fish preserves, while whispers spoke of darker substitutions. Boren's stare bores into you. Silas took 3 more last night, weighted him light. Quick splash. He taps the paddle handle. Stir faster. The implication hangs like gallows rope. You stir, knuckles white. The clumps break apart, revealing pale, fibrous strand stew thick for salt pork, too uniform for fish. Your stomach heaves. Borin says it. He snorts. Rat? Maybe. Plump ones down below. He chops mold off hardtack with violent thwacks. Or maybe long pig. The old rumor. The one from the storm. He watches you flinch. Hunger's a funny thing, boy. Makes you see possibilities. Mainstream fact. Cannibalism accusations peaked during medieval sieges, famines, e.g., Jerusalem 1099, often rooted in trauma-induced hysteria rather than fact. But the terror itself eroded sanity. 3 bleak jokes surface. Boren's chopping as the mold removal service. The stew strands as the mystery meat brigade. His whisper as the dinner menu update. The galley door bangs open. Silas looms, vinegar bucket in hand. Swabbing hereafter, every corner. His flint eyes scan the cauldron, Boren, your sweat-sheened face. Boren stirs faster, humming tunelessly. Silas's gaze lingers on the stew's surface. Smells strong. Boren grunts. Stretch thin, bosun, like the crew. Silas's jaw tightens. He knows. They all know. The math is inescapable. Fewer mouths, thinning stew, deepening dread. He throws the vinegar bucket down. Clean it. Then bilge pump. Jammed again. He leaves, taking the tension with him. Boren stops humming. He knows, he mutters, scraping burnt sludge from the pot's edge. Just won't say. Captains never do. He nods at the paddle. Keep stirring. Demons hate rhythm. You stir. Clockwise. The paddle scrapes the pot's bottom like a bone on stone. Outside, the crew eats in silence, bowls cradled like secrets. No one asks about the meat. No one meets your eyes. The bubo throbs a reminder your reprieve is borrowed. The stew thickens. The lies deepen. The St. Anne sails on, a ghost ship feeding its ghosts, while you stir the pot and wonder what simmers beneath the surface. The only certainty is the scrape of wood on iron, the reek of vinegar and despair, and the terrifying question, what fills the bowl tonight with a dead man's ring? The taste still burns in Davy's throat, and the bubo under your arm pulses, patient and cold, counting down the moments until your own desperate bargain comes due. The vinegar tonic vial glints dully in the bilge water sloshing around your ankles, a tiny beacon of impossible hope in the suffocating dark. You snatch it before the next surge of filthy water can drag it back into the pump's gullet. The glass is cold, crusted with grime and algae. Inside, a cloudy liquid sloshes, brownish green, with sediment swirling like drowned stars. 4 Thieves vinegar, the legendary plague remedy, rumored to protect grave robbers? Or just bilge water mixed with despair? Mainstream historical fact. 4 Thieves vinegar, recipes varied wildly. Garlic, wormwood, rue, lavender steeped in vinegar, peddled by charlatans as plague cures with zero efficacy, beyond perhaps masking fear with pungency. This vial looks like swamp runoff. Yet, you clutch it like a holy relic. Stowing it feels impossible. Silas's eyes miss nothing. Boren's galley offers no sanctuary. The forecastle? A tomb. Your only hiding place is your own body. You tuck the vial deep into the waistband of your sodden trousers, the cold glass pressing against your hip bone, a secret burning against your skin. You finish swabbing the galley, the vinegar smell a poor mask for the dread coiling in your gut. Boren watches, his cleaver idle. Find something shiny down there, maggot? He rasps. You shake your head, scrubbing harder. Just rust. He grunts, unconvinced. The bilge pump jam is worse. Ancient oak, warped and swollen, refuses to budge. Davy works beside you, shoulders straining. His breath, a ragged wheeze. Like trying to shift the rock of Gibraltar, he mutters. Sweat stings your eyes, mixing with the foul spray. Every lurch of the ship sends bilge water sloshing over your boots. The vial digs into your flesh. Quirky tidbit? Sailors believed whispering the names of drowned comrades could calm a jammed pump. A plea to the dead for mercy. Davy pants. Jem. Willow. Kit, ease the way, lads. The wood groans but holds fast. 3 dark jokes flicker. The pump as the ship's constipation. Davy's whisper as the ghostly help desk. The hidden vial as hip flask of doom. Davy pauses, wiping his brow with a trembling hand. His gaze lands on your hip, a subtle bulge where the vial presses against your thin tunic. His bloodshot eyes snap to yours. Not anger, not betrayal, recognition, and a desperate, hungry hope. What? What do you find? He breathes. Voice barely audible over the pump's gurgle. You hesitate. Trust is suicide currency here. But Davy's face is gray parchment stretched over bone. The hollows around his eyes are purple bruises. He knows. He sees the vial shape. Historians still fiercely debate whether plague remedies were traded more for psychological comfort than perceived efficacy. A placebo against the void. Davy's trembling hand reaches out. Not to grab, but to plead. Please, lad. I feel the heat. Just a flicker. Behind the eyes. His voice cracks. A sip? Just a sip? Mainstream fact. Placebo effect could induce temporary perceived relief, even in terminal cases, fueled by sheer belief. Davy's belief is a raw, physical ache. The vial burns against your skin. Your own bubo throbs dully beneath your arm, a sleeping beast. What if it works? What if it's nothing? What if Davy tells the calculations spin? Davy sees your hesitation. His hand dives into his own tunic, pulling out a small, oilcloth-wrapped bundle. He fumbles it open. Nestled inside is a thick silver ring, tarnished but solid, engraved with a tiny anchor. My Daz, he whispers, tears welling. Off a Genoese wreck. For I was pressed. Take it. For half? He holds it out. A pirate's ransom for a vial of ditch water. His eyes are wild, pleading. Just a swallow. To see the morning? The trade happens in the sloshing shadows. Your hand, trembling, pulls the vial free. Davy's grimy fingers clutch the oilcloth bundle. You unscrew the crude cork. The smell hits you. Overpowering vinegar, rancid herbs, something vaguely fecal. You tip a precious finger's width of the murky liquid into the vial's cap. Davy snatches it, spilling a drop onto the filthy deck. He knocks it back like fine whiskey, gagging instantly, eyes watering. Saints. Burns. He gasps, shuddering, but a moment later, he draws a deep, shaky breath. Clears. Clears the head, though. Hope, bright and brittle, lights his ravaged face. He clutches the empty cap like a talisman. Thank you, lad. Thank ye. He staggers back to the pump, attacking the handle with renewed, desperate vigor, humming a tuneless shanty. The ring sits heavy in your oilcloth, cold silver against your palm. You screwed the cork back on the vial, the liquid now slightly less full. Your own dread remains, but a sliver of Davy's manic hope infects you. You tuck the vial away, the silver ring a cold secret beside it. The bilge pump groans, unyielding. The St. Anne creaks. The dead weight in your pocket is lighter than air, heavier than lead. You bought a swallow of hope with the dead man's ring. The taste still burns in Davy's throat, and the bubo, under your arm pulses, patient and cold, counting down the moments, until your own desperate bargain comes due. Davy's desperate vigor lasts barely an hour. You're still straining against the immovable pump handle, the silver ring a cold lump in your pocket beside the half-empty vial, when his humming shanty dissolves into a wet, racking cough. It sounds like something tearing inside his chest. He doubles over, clutching his ribs, and when he straightens, spittle, flecked with bright red blood stains his chin. The manic light in his eyes flickers, replaced by a dawning, animal terror. He looks at you, not with accusation, but with a raw, pleading shame. "Lad," he gasps, wiping his mouth with a trembling, filthy sleeve, leaving a crimson smear. I just needed..." His hand instinctively flies to his neck, feeling for the telltale swelling. His eyes widen. He's found it. The brittle hope you sold him shatters like cheap glass. It happens fast. Too fast. Silas appears on the ladder like a summoned demon, drawn by the coughing or perhaps Davy's sudden stillness. His eyes, sharp as flint knives, sweep over Davy. The blood, the gray pallor, the hand clawing at his neck. Then they flick to you, standing too close, reeking of shared desperation and bilge. Silas doesn't shout. He doesn't need to. He snaps his fingers. Two hulking deckhands. Faces obscured by vinegar-soaked rags tied over nose and mouth, materialize behind him. Their eyes are hard, resigned. Mainstream historical fact. On plague ships, the sick were often identified by visible signs: buboes, fever, coughing blood, and isolated immediately with brutal efficiency. Delay meant death for the whole crew. There was no trial, no appeal. "Him," Silas rasps, pointing at Davy, whose legs are buckling. "And him." The finger swings to you. The accusation hangs in the reeking air. Davy whimpers, a broken sound. You freeze, the bubo under your arm pulsing like a second traitorous heart. He knows. Did Davy gasp your secret? Did Silas see the bulge? Or is it just guilt by proximity? Quirky tidbit. Some believed plague could be caught through the eyes. Hence, the averted gazes of the deckhands as they grab your arms. Their grip is iron, impersonal. You try to pull away, a half-formed denial choking in your throat. "I'm not sick. It was just the pump dust. The damp. Tell it to the rats below," one deckhand grunts, hauling you towards the main hatch. Davy is already being dragged, limp and sobbing. Silas watches, expressionless, as you pass. "Check him for contraband," he orders flatly. The hands pat you down roughly. Fingers find the ring in your pocket instantly. They yank it out, the silver anchor glinting dully in the gray light. One man pockets it without a glance. Then his hand gropes slower, towards your waistband. Panic floods you, cold and absolute. The vial. You twist violently, but it's useless. His thick fingers close around the small glass cylinder hidden under your tunic. He pulls it free, holding it up. The murky liquid swirls. 3 dark jokes die unborn. The ring as admission fee. The vial as liquid confession. Silas's face as plague poker. "Found some comfort, eh?" Silas sneers, taking the vial. He uncorks it, sniffs, and recoils. Smells like a midden heap brewed in piss. He looks from the vial to you, then to the whimpering Davy. Trading false cures now? Or just hoarding your own? He doesn't wait for an answer. With a flick of his wrist, he tosses the vial over the rail. It arcs through the drizzle and vanishes into the churning, gray sea without a splash. Your last shred of impossible hope sinks with it. Historians still argue fiercely about the effectiveness of any medieval plague measures, especially shipboard isolation. Was it a desperate, necessary quarantine, or merely a death sentence delivered early? watching your tiny hope disappear into the waves. The answer feels brutally clear. The hatch yawns open. A stench rolls up. Thick, sweet, putrid, layered with vinegar, vomit, excrement, and the unmistakable reek of rotting meat. It hits you like a physical blow, stealing your breath. Below is utter blackness, punctuated by low moans that seem to vibrate through the deck timbers. The deckhands don't hesitate. One shoves Davy towards the opening. He stumbles, crying out, and vanishes down into the dark with a thud and a sickening crack. Then it's your turn. A boot slams into your back. You pitch forward, grabbing wildly at the ladder's edge, missing. You fall. The world becomes a blur of darkness, the stench intensifying to gagging levels. The sound of your own impact drowned by the chorus of suffering below. You land hard on something soft yet unyielding. A body? Bundled rags? The air is hot, thick, suffocating. Moisture drips from the low deck beams overhead. The hatch slams shut above, plunging you into near-total darkness, sealing you in with the damned. The St. Anne. Groans are muffled here, replaced by the wet rattle of breaths, delirious muttering, and the relentless, high-pitched skittering of rats feasting in the shadows. You push yourself up, your hand sinking into something warm and sticky on the floorboards. Isolation isn't just confinement. It's being swallowed alive by the plague itself, in a coffin already packed with the dying. The bubo under your arm burns. The reek fills your lungs. This is the sick hold. There is no way out. The slam of the hatch plunges you into a suffocating world of sound and stench. The darkness isn't empty. It's thick with the wet rattle of lungs drowning from within. Low moans that rise and fall like a tide of agony. And the frantic, omnipresent scuttle of rats feasting in the corners. Your hand, still slick from whatever warm, sticky mess you landed in, instinctively flies to the burning lump beneath your arm. It's no longer just a pulse. It's a throbbing, angry coal, radiating heat down your side. Marked. The word echoes in the suffocating dark. Mainstream historical fact. Isolation holds on plague ships. Were often the lowest, foulest decks, deliberately chosen as dumping grounds. Survival rates were near zero, turning them into charnel houses before the ship reached port. If it ever did. You scramble back, pressing against the rough, slimy timbers of the hull. Shapes move in the gloom. Huddled masses, thrashing forms, still bundles. The air is furnace hot, heavy with the cloying sweetness of decay layered over vinegar, vomit, and human waste. Moisture drips incessantly from the beams above, cold kisses on your fevered skin. Davy landed somewhere nearby. You hear his rasping breaths, punctuated by choked whimpers. Lad, you? There? His voice is a threadbare whisper, raw, with pain and terror. You don't answer. Your eyes strain, adjusting. A faint sliver of gray light bleeds around the edges of the locked hatch above, uselessly illuminating swirling motes of filth in the air. Quirky tidbit: dying sailors sometimes hallucinated the plague as a physical entity, a black dog or pest maiden stalking the hold. In the shifting shadows near a slumped figure, you swear you see a darker shape coalesce, then vanish. Hours blur. Thirst claws at your throat, sharper than the bubo's pain. The heat is unbearable, sapping your strength, blurring your thoughts. You drift in and out of a feverish haze. Images flicker. Silas tossing the vial, the ring vanishing into a deckhand's pocket, Boren's cleaver, the indifferent gulls. Davy's rasping breath suddenly hitches, then stops. A long, wet sigh escapes him, followed by absolute silence from his corner. The hold absorbs the sound, the other moans continuing unabated. Another bundle for the rats. Historians still argue whether the psychological horror of the holds, the sensory overload, the hopelessness, accelerated death as much as the plague itself. Sitting in Davy's cooling silence, the answer feels undeniable. Then, movement. Not rats. A figure detaches itself from the deeper shadows near the hull, crawling slowly towards you. It's a man, or what's left of one. His face is skeletal, eyes sunken pits gleaming with a strange febrile light. His tunic hangs in rags, revealing angry red tracks where he's clawed at his own skin. Around his neck, a swollen, dark mass pulses obscenely. He stops an arm's length away, reeking of death, and something else. Vinegar? He holds up a small, crude clay flask, stoppered with a twist of rag. His voice is a papery scrape. Water? He croaks. Hope, treacherous and immediate, flares in your chest. You nod desperately, reaching out. He pulls the flask back slightly. Not water. A wheezing chuckle escapes him. Better. Protection. He uncorks it. The sharp, pungent tang of strong vinegar mixed with bitter herbs cuts through the miasma. It's a different smell than your lost vial. Harsher, cruder. Stole it. From the officer's stores, he whispers, pride warring with pain in his voice. Barrel tap. Drifted slow. For days. He takes a tiny, careful sip himself. Shuddering violently, burns the sickness inside. Mainstream fact. Vinegar, especially strong wine vinegar, was a common disinfectant and preservative. Desperate people clung to the idea it could cleanse internally too, despite the agony of drinking it straight. 3 dark jokes curdle. The flask is liquid armor. The thief is plague sommelier. Your thirst is vinegar or death. He sees the desperate hunger in your eyes. His gaze drops to your feet. You still wear your battered leather boots, the only substantial thing left from your old life, crusted with filth but intact. Them, he rasps, pointing a trembling skeletal finger. For a swallow. Full swallow. The demand is insane. Your boots offer the only barrier between your skin and the plague-ridden filth coating the hold's floor. Without them, but the burning in your armpit screams. The thirst is a desert in your mouth. The vinegar smell promises something. Cleansing? A delay? Anything but this. All of it? You croak, staring at the small flask. It couldn't hold more than a few mouthfuls. He shakes his head, a painful movement. One swallow. Big one. He licks cracked, bleeding lips. Boots. Now. The calculation is brutal. Primal. Dignity. Protection. Sanity. All measured against the fiery promise in that clay flask. The rats skitter closer, sensing weakness. You look down at your boots. You look at the flask. You think of Davy's desperate gulp of ditch water, the fleeting light in his eyes before it guttered out. Is this any different? Scholarly debate rages. Were such bargains driven by genuine belief in the remedy, or simply the mind's final, frantic grasp at agency in the face of annihilation? Your fingers fumble with the stiff, salt-crusted laces. The leather is damp, stubborn. The man watches, eyes burning with avarice and pain. Finally, they come off. The cold, viscous filth of the hold floor instantly soaks through your thin, filthy socks. The sensation is revolting, slimy, chilling, crawling. You push the boots towards him. He snatches them with surprising speed, clutching them to his chest like treasure. Then, with trembling hands, he holds out the flask. Open wide, plague brother. He whispers, a mad grin splitting his face. You tilt your head back. Ipor. The liquid hits your tongue like liquid fire. concentrated vinegar, harsh herbs, maybe even traces of whatever barrel it dripped from. It scorches your mouth, your throat, searing down into your stomach. You gag, eyes watering, throat convulsing. It's torture. It tastes like rust and bitterness and despair. You force yourself to swallow, choking, gasping for air that tastes like death. The man cackles softly, already struggling to pull one of your boots onto his own bare, ulcerated foot. Burns the sickness. He hisses again, more to himself now. Cleans you right out. The fire spreads through your core. Your stomach clenches violently. Is it working? Is it poison? You don't know. You only know the boots are gone. The cold, clinging filth is on your skin. The bubo still burns. And the desperate, fleeting warmth spreading from your gut is the only thing you have left to cling to in the reeking, rat-filled dark. You paid for fire with your souls. Now you wait to see which consumes you first. The plague or the cure. The vinegar fire rages in your belly, a searing counterpoint to the cold, clinging filth soaking through your socks and into your skin. The skeletal man, your boot thief, cradles his prize, rocking back and forth, muttering about cleansing fires and pestilential humors. His mad whispers blend with the wet rattle of the hold, the skittering rats, and your own ragged, scorched breathing. Time stretches and warps in the fevered dark. Is it minutes? Hours? The agony in your gut twists, sharp and sudden. You double over, retching violently, but nothing substantial comes up. Just acidic bile that burns your throat again, tasting of vinegar and despair, cleans you right out. The thief's cackle echoes in your pounding skull. Quirky tidbit: some plague sufferers believed violent purging was the cure working, expelling the poisonous humors. You feel no cure, only violation, inside and out. Then, a different sound pierces the thick blanket of moans and drips. Faint at first, muffled by the deck above. A rapid thumping, like heavy footsteps running. Then, sharp, urgent shouts. Words are indistinct, but the tone is unmistakable. Panic, raw, and contagious. Your boot thief falls silent, his skeletal head cocked like a vulture hearing carrion fall. Above, the running intensifies. Something heavy scrapes across the deck. Wood groaning on wood. The longboat. The realization hits you with the force of a wave. Mainstream historical fact. Desertion by the remaining healthy crew was a grimly common end for plague ships found adrift. Survival instincts overrode all duty, leaving the infected to their fate. The Saint Anne had become a floating tomb, and the gravediggers were fleeing. The sounds escalate. Frantic hammering, the rasp of ropes, more shouts, orders this time clipped and desperate. Hurry, cast off. Leave it, man, leave it! A heavy splash close to the hull. Then another. Supplies jettisoned for speed. Or men jumping? The boot thief scrambles towards the ladder, his movements jerky, fueled by sudden, terrified energy. He claws at the locked hatch, his ragged nails scraping uselessly against the thick oak. No, no, don't leave us. Take us, take us. His voice is a raw shriek, echoing the futile cries rising from other shapes in the dark. Someone else lurches towards the hatch, collapsing before reaching it. The hold fills with a new chorus, not just moans of pain, but wails of pure, abandoned terror. Historians still fiercely debate the morality and frequency of such desertions. Was it universal cowardice, or the last rational act of doomed men facing certain contagion? The hammering of nails securing the longboat's davits overhead answers the question with brutal finality. The boot thief gives up on the hatch. He whirls, his eyes wild in the gloom, landing on you. They're leaving, he shrieks, spittle flying. The cowards! The faithless dogs! He clutches your stolen boots tighter. We must. The cannon ports. The stern. He stumbles towards the aft bulkhead, vanishing into the deeper shadows where the hull curves, driven by some frantic, delusional plan. You don't follow. The effort seems impossible. The vinegar still churns in your gut. The bubo burns. The filth seeps into your bones. The shouts above are fading. The hammering stops. 3 dark jokes dissolve. The longboat as promotion to survivor. The boot thief as escape committee of 1. Your own bare feet as no ticket required. A strange, heavy silence begins to descend, punctuated only by the weeping and rattling breaths within the hold. Then, the distinct, rhythmic splash, splash, splash of oars biting water, growing fainter, heading away. Dawn. You can sense it now. A subtle, gray lightning seeping around the hatch edges. No longer the sickly yellow of lanterns, but the cold, pale wash of morning. The splashes grow distant, rhythmic, relentless. Splash, splash, splash. Each stroke a nail in your coffin. You push yourself up, swaying, driven by a final desperate urge to see, to witness the abandonment. The ladder is slick, impossible, without boots. You find footholds on slimy crossbeams, hauling yourself up, hand over trembling hand, ignoring the fiery protest in your armpit. You press your eye to the widest crack where the hatch meets the coaming. Cold, gray, dawn light stings your eyes. Mist hangs low over a heaving, leaden sea. And there, perhaps 50 yards off the starboard beam, pulling away with strong, steady strokes, the St. Anne's longboat. It's packed. You see Silas at the tiller, his face set in grim stone. You see the hulking deckhands who threw you down here, straining at the oars. You see Boren hunched over, maybe weeping, maybe just exhausted. A handful of others. 8? 10? All that's left. All fleeing the cursed ship. No one looks back. Not once. They row with the focused intensity of men escaping hell itself, shrinking against the vast, indifferent gray horizon. Mainstream fact. Life expectancy in a crowded longboat on the open sea was perilously low. But for these men, it represented a sliver of hope the plague ship could never offer. Your hope sinks with the sight. The boot thief materializes beside you, gibbering, pointing at the retreating boat. There. See? Cowards! We'll signal! We'll... His ravings cut off abruptly. He sways, his eyes rolling back. He clutches his throat, the swollen mass there, pulsating visibly, even in the dim light. A gurgle escapes him. Then he collapses at the foot of the ladder, twitching once before falling still, your boots still clutched in his rigid arms. Another bundle. You slump back from the crack, sliding down the timbers to the filthy deck. The splashes are gone now. Only the sea's sigh against the hull, the moans of the dying, and the triumphant skittering of rats feasting on the newly dead. The gray light through the crack feels cold, accusatory. They took the longboat. They took your boots. They took the last pretense of hope. You are alone on the St. Anne, adrift in a sea of the dead and dying, with nothing left but the fire in your gut, the burn under your arm, and the creeping, icy certainty of the silence settling over the derelict ship. The abandonment is complete. The only sound now is the waiting. Silence. Not true silence. The sea still whispers against the St. Anne's hull, a low, eternal sigh. timbers groan like old bones settling. Overhead, a lone seagull cries, a desolate sound that only deepens the emptiness. But the human sounds, they've dwindled to almost nothing. The wet rattle, the agonized moans, the mad whispers, replaced by a thick, heavy stillness broken only by the skittering and gnawing of rats grown bold and fat. The gray light filtering through the hatch crack feels cold, indifferent. You don't move. The effort is too great. The vinegar fire in your gut has subsided to a dull, smoldering ache, overshadowed by the inferno raging under your arm. The bubo is massive now, a hard, throbbing knot of agony that seems to pulse in time with the dying ship's creaks. Your skin burns, yet you shiver uncontrollably in the damp chill of the hold. Mainstream historical fact. The final stages of bubonic plague often brought raging fever, delirium, and a profound, crushing weakness as the body succumbed to septic shock. You push yourself up, swaying. The filth squelches between your bare toes. The boot thief lies nearby, eyes wide and glassy, your stolen boots still clutched in his rigid embrace. Other shapes litter the deck, some still, some twitching faintly, all abandoned. The latter calls, not hope, but a final witness. You climb slowly, each movement sending jolts of fire through your side, using beams slick with mold and worse for purchase. The hatch resists your feeble push, but a sliver of space remains where the lock didn't fully catch. You shove with the last dregs of your strength. It groans open a hand's width. Cold, salt-tinged air washes over your fevered face, a momentary, cruel relief. You haul yourself onto the main deck. The sight steals what little breath you have left. The St. Anne drifts, a ghost ship. Sails hang limp and ragged from the yards, rigging snakes uselessly across the deck. The helm is abandoned, lashed loosely, and the bodies, bundled in stained sailcloth, slumped against rails, sprawled where they fell. They lie everywhere, stiffening in the pale dawn light. Seagulls perch on them, tearing at exposed flesh with casual greed. The longboat is a tiny, vanishing speck on the vast, gray horizon. Quirky tidbit? Sailors believed a ship abandoned by its crew became a devil's playground, haunted by the vengeful dead and avoided by superstitious vessels. Watching the gulls feast, the superstition feels chillingly plausible. 3 final dark jokes evaporate unformed. The gulls as cleanup crew, the abandoned helm as autopilot to nowhere, your own survival as winning the world's worst lottery. You stumble, catching yourself on the mainmast. The world tilts, blurs. The fever paints phantom shapes in the mist. Silas laughing on the longboat, Davy whispering names at the pump, the skeletal thief clutching your boots. The bubo pulses, a monstrous, alien heartbeat consuming you from within. Historians still fiercely debate the final moments aboard plague ships like this. Was it agonizing terror, numbed acceptance, or fevered delirium that claimed the last souls? As you sink to your knees on the blood-stained deck, the cold wood rough against your skin, the gulls screeching their harsh song overhead, the distinctions blur. The pain is immense, a white-hot core in the freezing emptiness. The silence of the abandoned ship presses in, heavy and absolute, broken only by the sea's sigh and the gull's cries. You close your eyes against the indifferent gray sky. The St. Anne groans, a dying leviathan adrift on a vast, uncaring ocean. There is no mercy here, only the slow, inevitable surrender to the silence and the creeping cold. You are the last witness. Soon, you won't be. Word count, 518. Wind down, 300 words. The image fades, the groaning timbers softening into the gentle hum of your fan. the gulls' cries dissolving into the distant, comforting sounds of the night outside your window. That cold deck, that desperate struggle, that vast, uncaring sea, let it all recede now, like a grim tide pulling back from the shore of your awareness. The St. Anne drifts further and further into the mists of the past, carrying its heavy burden of silence with it, leaving only the quiet safety of your own room. Breathe deeply. Feel the soft support beneath you, the gentle weight of your blanket. Notice the clean air filling your lungs, free of vinegar and decay. The only pulse now is your own steady heartbeat, a quiet rhythm of life and peace. Those distant horrors belonged to another time, another world. They cannot touch you here, in this sanctuary of warmth and stillness. Let the tension in your shoulders ease, the tightness in your jaw soften. Unclench your hands, let your fingers relax into the softness beneath them. The vast, indifferent ocean of history has its tides and terrors. Yes, but tonight, you are anchored securely in the calm harbor of the present. The whispers of the past fade, replaced by the gentle lullaby of your own breathing, the soft sigh of the air moving through your room. There is no plague ship here, no grasping hands, no desperate bargains, only stillness, only safety, only the deep, enveloping comfort of the night wrapping around you like a soft, protective cloak. Feel yourself sinking deeper into this peace. Let the remnants of the story drift away like smoke on a breeze. Your thoughts grow quiet, your body heavy and warm, perfectly at rest. The darkness behind your eyelids is soft and welcoming, a gentle void cradling you. The journey is over. The horrors are past. All that remains is this profound quiet, this deep, reassuring calm, settling into every muscle, every bone. You are safe. You are still. You are profoundly, completely at peace. Let the quiet hum of the night carry you now, down, down, into the deepest, darkest, most restful waters of sleep.